Total life tracking. Are we living in a panopticon? That is, a global prison that we don't notice we're in because we're so comfy in our lives. This channel is of course about science and technology that improves our lives, and today's crop of breakthroughs and product releases all do that, but at what cost? Is total life tracking really worth it? Let me know what you think in the comments, and let's dive in.
Mafftopia technology, science, breakthroughs, discoveries, news.
Total life tracking. Amazon Ring have released a special feature which I think everybody was hoping for, and that is familiar faces. You could view it as the surveillance feature that nobody asked for. Roughly nobody. Amazon's doorbell cameras have begun to identify and catalogue your visitors using facial recognition. If you have Amazon Ring, chances are you've already got this feature now, and to be fair, you might actually be using it and enjoying the convenience that it brings. Maybe security as well. But anyway, getting ahead of ourselves a bit there. So this new feature, Familiar Faces, allows the doorbell cameras to autonomously recognise and label individuals. It keeps a database of up to 50 faces. So happy house owners can now have their doorbell system alert them that Aunt May is at the door, or your crazy neighbour, or the postman, rather than a generic person detected notification. This controversial, to say the least, update began a phased rollout to US Ring owners in December, and it's still underway. The rollout is now accelerating, so we're seeing mainstream adoption of this wonderful new feature, or dystopian new feature. This rather blurs a critical line. Because the feature scans and catalogues faces of people who have basically not consented, can't really say that just walking up to your front door is consent for being photographed. Well, okay, they're out in the public place of the outdoors. So in that sense, they don't really need to give consent to be photographed. But that said, when it goes beyond that into biometrics, tracking and so on, then it becomes a little bit blurry. So yes, the critical line is officially blurry. So for example, delivery workers, Amazon's own delivery workers, of course they're not really going to be in a position to complain very much, are they? Neighbours, children playing outside, strangers walking past. Amazon does claim that faces are encrypted, although who gets to decrypt them, and unnamed faces auto-delete after 30 days. But in any case, the underlying surveillance structure is now in place, and let's face it, it is a surveillance infrastructure. Notably, familiar faces isn't available in Illinois, Texas, or Portland, Oregon, where they have strict biometric privacy laws, basically around consent, such as Illinois' Biometric Information Privacy Act, or BIPA. But, that's only actually 3 jurisdictions out of basically thousands. And also, of course, just whether the faces are encrypted or not doesn't really matter, right? Because Ring has a documented history of giving it up in the interests of law enforcement. Amazon has also partnered with Flock, a surveillance camera system that's used by police and federal agencies. The convergence of doorbell footage, facial databases, and law enforcement access has rather set in place the foundations for this infrastructure for mass surveillance and tracking of individuals' movements. It's essentially a capability that totalitarian governments kind of dream. Well, they don't have to dream of it now. They've got it. Various senators and the EFF, the Electric Frontier Foundation, have all issued warnings. It's the sort of thing that used to be dystopian sci-fi, just, if only we'd heeded those warnings. It's really the moment when ambient surveillance becomes normalised. We get used to it. It is very, very easy to forget that you're just constantly being filmed and tracked wherever you go. This is just that taken to another level, where us citizens are actively helping that, participating in the effort, doing our part for the state. In dystopian fiction, Minority Report, 1984, Orwell's Telescreens from 1984, pervasive facial recognition is a hallmark of control systems. Ring has basically transformed that fiction into millions of cameras collecting biometric data in real time. So well done. Multitasking material that computes like a brain. Scientists have created materials that remember, compute, and learn, all without electronic transistors. Researchers at the Indian Institute of Science have achieved a watershed moment in material science by developing molecular-scale devices that behave alternately as memory units, logic gates, analog processors, or electronic synapses, learning systems basically, all from the same material. This breaks decades of theoretical limitations and moves molecular electronics from out of speculative research to potentially, to now, working prototypes. 17 of them, in fact. The devices are based on specially designed ruthenium complexes. The team of chemists involved in the research synthesized 17 ruthenium-based molecular complexes with precisely engineered ligands. These allow electrons and ions to reorganize dynamically. This adaptability comes directly from chemical design. By carefully altering molecular structure, the same device switches between functioning as digital memory, analog processing, or a synapse. I think I may have listed those. Or a synapse, which kind of mimics biological learning. In other words, it's a neuromorphic device. It's inspired by the brain. One device can store information and process it and learn, capabilities that have required separate silicon components for like the last 7 decades at least. What can we hope to see from this in terms of like real world impact? So energy efficient AI hardware built directly into materials rather than being kind of bolted onto silicon substrates. So neuromorphic computing finally has materials where learning is an intrinsic property, not engineered on top of inert substrates. The team is already working to integrate these molecular systems onto silicon chips, so true integration. They would essentially create AI hardware that's inherently intelligent rather than merely simulating intelligence. Societal impact? Well, if scaled out, this would actually see an entire new computing architecture. It's mad when you think about it. So basically brains that store and understand and process information rather than simply systems that get the stored data, interpret the stored data, produce output through some sort of algorithmic understanding of the data, is much more direct. Instead of power-hungry, separate memory and processing units, compute becomes embedded in the material itself. For data centers and consumer devices, that would mean dramatically lower energy consumption, less heat, and fundamentally different approaches towards accelerating large language model training. Do keep in mind, before you'll get too excited, that this would also enable mass surveillance systems to be rolled out with lower power requirements. So kind of smart matter, smart eyes that are just splattered onto walls and lampposts and so on, just observing, noting, learning, processing, remembering. So in practical terms, these neuromorphic devices that are actually based on this breakthrough and this brave new computing architecture must be at least 3 or 4 years away from being a viable product. But still, the ability to churn out smart matter through advanced chemistry would move us towards infinite, flawless memory, which, funnily enough, is exactly what Sam Altman has been talking about lately. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, who we've mentioned once or twice on this channel, insists that the next AI breakthrough is going to be machines that remember everything that you've ever done, and soon, presumably, everything that you've ever thought. In a podcast appearance in late December of last year, Sam Altman outlined OpenAI's next major milestone, which would be AI systems with, quote, infinite flawless memory. That is, the ability to recall every detail of a user's entire life, every document they've ever seen, every conversation, every moment. He stated that OpenAI is targeting 2026 to achieve this exciting, nightmarish capability. Can't help thinking that sometimes these market leaders, these billionaires guiding our lives, get more excited about what's going to be great for them and for the overarching state, rather than what's specifically going to be great for us, the customers. I feel like there's some level of projection there. If he's excited about all that stuff, then surely we are too. Current LLMs operate on a context window. They can only describe a limited amount of text at once. Memory of the sort that Altman describes would fundamentally transform AI from stateless language generators to genuinely personalized agents that understand your entire life context. An AI that remembers everything about you is no longer an assistant. It becomes something closer to a personal oracle or a personal jailer or a personal carer, depending how you look at it. This probably hardly needs saying, but an AI with perfect memory of your life is also the ultimate surveillance tool. Combined with rings, facial databases, and government biometric systems, such technology becomes a mechanism for total life tracking. Did I mention flawless memory, remembering everything that you think? Well, Neuralink is now scaling to mass production. So Neuralink is the brain-computer interface, which is now moving from lab to clinic. So Neuralink has announced automated brain surgery and high-volume implant production for 2026. In this case, the automated brain surgery is the implanting of the interface into one's brain. On New Year's Eve, Elon Musk announced that Neuralink will transition from experimental clinical trials to mass production of brain-computer interfaces in 2026, this year, with fully automated surgical procedures. this represents a critical inflection point where sci-fi brain augmentation transitions to medical reality. There's a lot of brain augmentation in sci-fi stories. Neil Ashe's Quality Universe, where there's a huge amount of that sort of thing. Similarly with Ian M. Banks' culture novels, both of those are well worth checking out, I think for different reasons, but huge digression, but just check them out. Those are generally the more positive aspects of just getting a brain implant being augmented. There's plenty on the dystopian side, of course. That's worth a look too, for the darker side. As it turns out, I think we're basically seeing the darker side in reality. But shouldn't be too cynical, because this is also going to seriously help with disabled people, for example. People have disabilities where they can't move a limb, for example, or they lack a particular limb. So on with the mechanized prosthetic, and they'll then be able to control it with these devices. That side of it is utterly amazing. I just hope that the more dystopian side of this can be kept separate, kept in the realm of fiction, ideally. So the N1 implant is coin-sized and replaces a small piece of skull. Just carve out a bit of skull and just slot the coin in. 64 ultra-thin threads, each 20 times thinner than a human hair, extend into the brain, carrying 1,024 electrodes, power of 2, like it, that decode neural signals. Users control computers and digital devices with just their thoughts. The breakthrough is that these new surgical techniques allow threads to pass through the dura, the brain's protective membrane, without it needing to be removed. That drastically reduces the complexity and the risk of the whole procedure. So the current status is that 12 patients so far have received implants. That was as of September 2025, so probably a few more now. The first patient, quadriplegic since 2016, actually managed to demonstrate playing video games, browsing the web, and controlling digital interfaces with thought, which actually is astounding. Neuralink has also secured FDA breakthrough device designation for vision and speech restoration. A convoy trial is also underway for robotic arm control. So Musk claims that technology can restore full body functionality for paralyzed individuals and those with severed spinal cords. So on the medical side then, paralysis, ALS, spinal cord injury, blindness, severe speech impairment are all now potentially treatable. So on the labour side, full body functionality means that paralyzed individuals could actually work, increasing their economic independence and ability to participate in society and socially and so on, to actually have a life beyond being just however they're afflicted, lying in a hospital bed or whatever. There's probably a bit of an inevitable path here, I hope it isn't inevitable, but towards non-medical augmentation, so memory, processing speed, sensory enhancement. So in other words, to turn us all into the Ubermensch. Kind of blurs, there's a lot of blurring of lines going on in today's updates, but this blurs the line between therapy and enhancement. So once the first healthy person gets a brain implant for cognitive augmentation, I mean, for one thing, as soon as whatever they got plugged in becomes obsolete, it's going to be a constant upgrade path, of course, and kind of wonder, do they connect to a server? If their license expires, does it just get switched off? Do they instantly go stupid again, like the rest of us? All kinds of questions there. Obviously, the authoritarianism side is extremely high risk. Brain-computer interfaces record neural data, total flawless memory, again, thoughts, emotions, intentions, kind of minority report going on there a bit. A compromised system or hostile actor, basically, accessing the interface could monitor somebody's thoughts in real time. They may not even realise that it's a hostile actor. It could just be standard service monitoring your thoughts, just shutting you down if you get violent or bad or just plain negative thoughts for your protection, for your continued happiness. They could manipulate decisions via stimulation of different thoughts. Zap, zap, I must do this thing. They can create a permanent record of your cognitive activity. They could enable coercion, basically implant a dissenter and monitor their compliance. I mean, that's not to say that isn't happening right now through more traditional deep hypnotic means, sort of trigger phrases and so on. While this is incredible for the sort of people that this is actually going to help, it's going to transform their lives, the flip side is, oh my god, what a nightmare. So one to probably keep an eye on. Regulatory frameworks, that's if there's the appetite from governments to regulate this. Thank you so much for watching today. So to return to our question, is total life tracking worth the absolute loss of privacy and control that it brings with it? What do we gain from total life tracking? That is, from our lives just being tracked from beginning to end in every possible way, because that's kind of where we're headed, let's face it. So is it worth it? So all of that loss of privacy control for the sake of a multi-agentic lifestyle. Privacy and control, one way to look at it is that privacy and control are both zero-sum games. Loss of control control of some aspect of your life means really that you're handing over control to someone else. Loss of privacy means that you're handing over an intimate view of your life to someone else. Like me, you probably find that incredibly worrying. Getting a bit bleak now, I know. So what's the answer? Is there an answer? And if so, what is it? Well, we can try and find the right balance, of course, between convenience, control, and the risk of being left behind. But where's the line? Dunno. That's for each of us to decide. Leave a comment to let me know your thoughts. Where is that line? And while you're there, please like the video. Much appreciated. In the next video, we'll dig into the best and the weirdest of what came out of CES this year. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And so, till next time, bye.